Hey everyone, this is Kennedy Hawk from the Marvel Champions Monthly Fan Podcast team. With the new release of RRG 1.4, I wanted to do some update recaps on some of the different rulings that have changed or evolved, some of the major ones from this new rules reference guide. So this first video is going to be all about the keyword defense. So don't get too defensive if I say things that are different than how you interpreted it. This is how I interpreted the rules. Lots of people have different interpretations still. Hopefully that all gets cleared up with rules questions soon, but I think for the most part we have a pretty reasonable understanding of how the new defense ruling works. So, with the latest RRG update, there's a whole new ruling for defense. All the text that's here in red wasn't in the old RRG, and as you're going to see as we go through this, most of it is red. So you should really just consider this entire entry new and read it from top to bottom. So we're going to go through and do that. So defend/defense. During enemy attack, a player may defend against the attack using cards they control. Only one player at a time can defend against an enemy attack. Once a player defends, no other player can defend against that same attack. A hero can use their basic defense power to defend against an enemy attack. This has always been true. This is pretty normal. A hero must exhaust to use this power. The amount of damage dealt by the attack is reduced by the hero's defense value, and any remaining damage is dealt to that hero. Once a hero defends against an attack, no other friendly character can defend against that attack. You're going to see this is like the bottom of the first 3 bullets because they are stressing this is a new thing. Any ally can exhaust to defend against an enemy attack, so allies can defend too. Damage from the attack is dealt to that ally. Once an ally defends against an attack, no other friendly character can defend against that attack. So if you defend with an ally, you're not going to be able to later defend with your hero. And we'll find out what that means in the next chunk of this entry. So, 3 more bullets to get through. Almost all of it's red again. When a player resolves a triggered ability labeled as a defense, such as hero interrupt (defense), that player's identity becomes the defender and is considered to have defended the attack. They do not reduce the damage by their defense value, so it's not a basic defense. What that means is you can now play these hero interrupt defense abilities on other players' attacks and things like that. But if someone else has already chosen to defend, remember, only one character, player, thing can be the defender. So if someone else is already defending, you're not going to be able to play these cards as a defense ability. Unless specified by the ability's text, a hero does not exhaust when using such an ability. The defending player may resolve any number of defense abilities during an enemy attack, as long as the triggering conditions for those abilities are met. Once a player resolves a defense ability during an enemy attack, no other player can resolve defense abilities for that same attack. So this again is telling you, if someone else gets attacked, they choose not to defend, you can play something like Preemptive Strike. It's going to make you the defender, which is pretty cool. It's going to trigger the defense, so you can trigger all those responses that happen after defenses, but you're now the defender and no one else can play defense events during this attack until a new attack starts. If a player defends against an enemy attack that targets a different player, the defending player becomes the new target of that attack. So you are now going to take the damage from that base attack if you play a Preemptive Strike to cancel a boost icon. If no character is used to defend against an enemy attack, that attack is considered undefended. Additionally, if a defending ally is defeated before the attack is dealt, such as through a boost ability, that attack is considered undefended and all the damage would go to that ally's controller's identity. So, that was a lot of stuff. I'm a little confused. I don't know about you. Confused has nothing to do with defense, but right now it sort of feels like it does. So let's go through chunk by chunk and see what it means. So the very first entry, the opening line, says during an enemy attack, a player may defend against an attack using cards they control. There's a whole big thing you can read about control, and there's an ongoing discussion here. Does this mean that these defense tagged cards that are used now to defend attacks can only be played during attacks? In RRG 1.3, there was this little paragraph in here that said, if a triggered ability is labeled as a defense, such as hero action defense, that ability can only be resolved by a player while they are the target of an attack. I think that is still true based on this first sentence. There's a lot of people on Discord that feel the same way. There's also a large camp that feels the opposite way, so we're still waiting for a little bit more clarity on this, but to be conservative for now, I would only play those defense events during an attack when someone else has not yet defended. So you're not going to be able to use shield block and wiggle room to block green goblin damage and things like that. You're going to have to use them during attacks still. At least that's my interpretation of this opening clause. So we've only got one sentence in. I'm already telling you people are confused. That's a good sign. But there's some good stuff to come. So let's keep moving. Bullets 1 through 3. Basically, this is saying that only one player or character or ally or whatever you want to call them can defend an attack at a time. No other players can jump in and play a secondary defense or things like that. You're going to have to look for things that reduce damage that aren't defense tagged or don't count as defenses. So heroes and allies can defend. They can defend for other players. They can defend for all sorts of attacks, but only one character is allowed to defend. So that's what the first 3 bullets are basically saying. It is important, the distinction at the bottom of the 3rd bullet. Once an ally defends against an attack, no other friendly character can defend against that attack. That means if you defend with an ally to become the target, you can no longer preemptive strike the boost card that comes up when that ally is being attacked, because that preemptive strike is your hero trying to defend the attack, and that's not allowed anymore. Alright, so bullet 4. This is the cool one. When a player resolves a triggered ability labeled as a defense, such as Hero Interrupt, that player's identity becomes the defender and is considered to have defended the attack. This is like a huge sentence that is very different than anything has been before. So when you play one of these Hero Interrupt defenses, like Preemptive Strike, which we'll talk about a lot in the next couple slides, you now become the defender. So now not only do you reduce damage and deal some stuff back to the villain, you take the rest of the attack on you as a character. So you can, as a protection player, jump in front of other players' attacks without exhausting to defend. That means you can attack or thwart the next round. It also means if the next attack comes against you, you can exhaust to defend and reduce that damage as well. So this is a huge change. It used to be, at least in 1.3, if you wanted to play this Hero Interrupt defense ability, you would have to exhaust to defend, redirect the attack to you, then play this defense event. Now the defense event makes you the defender. There's a little bit of confusion here. It says you are considered to have defended the attack. I've tossed and turned about how this is meant to work, and my interpretation of this now, and it's not the interpretation I had the first day, was what it means is you are now considered to have declared yourself the defender, which is step 2 of that attack phase. The villain gets a boost card, then you're allowed to declare a character as a defender. So you are now the defender. It doesn't mean that in the middle of the attack you can trigger these defense responses, although I could still see the ruling going that way. So there's a little bit of a timing hiccup here, but ultimately a really cool new ability to use these defense interrupts to snag attacks from other players, especially characters that want to be attacked multiple times, like we've seen in the preview for Drax and stuff like that. Also important here, the defending player may resolve any number of defense abilities during enemy attack, as long as the triggering conditions are met. So you can stack a bunch of defenses on top of each other, if that makes sense, which is something kind of new. You haven't been able to stack attacks on top of each other with those attack parentheticals. They're separate attacks that all resolve separately. With defenses, there's probably a way to overlap these defenses, which is something a little interesting. So this blows my mind. This is just completely different and new from what we've done before. So let's talk about this for a minute. Playing defense tagged cards now counts as a defense. That is huge. This lets you trigger responses to when your hero defends without exhausting. We're not sure exactly where in the timing chart that goes. I think it occurs after the attack resolves. But this solves a huge tempo hit for protection players trying to play these defense interrupts, which there's not a ton of them yet, but I'm anticipating this rule change happen because there's more coming down the pipeline. In multiplayer, this is really cool because now playing a defense event lets you snag attacks from other players. So let's look at some examples, because people have asked, well, what does this actually change? What does this do that's different? So these 2 examples, sorry, I had to cut in and out there to fix some typos in my slides. There's still probably a few there, but it could be worse. So 2 players are playing. Claw attacks Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's player, he gets to draw a card because he chooses not to defend, but he's still having an attack initiated against him from the villain. So Rhino gets dealt this face-down boost card, Spider-Man passes on attacking. The savvy She-Hulk protection player, she has preemptive strike, 2 counter punches, and then just some random card in her hand. So she can pay 1 resource to play preemptive strike, which reads Hero Interrupt Defense. Well, when a boost card is turned face up while a villain attacks, cancel all the boost icons in that card, then deal 1 damage to the villain for each boost icon canceled this way. So by playing this preemptive strike, she prevents 3 damage from reaching someone, and she deals 3 back to Rhino. So that's like a 6 hit point swing for the team, which is really great. But on top of that, she now becomes the defender. The target now becomes She-Hulk, and she's going to take Rhino's base attack because she's canceled his boost card. So if Rhino has a base attack of 2, she's going to end up taking 2 at the end of this attack. But since she defended without exhausting, at the end of that attack, She-Hulk takes 2. She can play the 2 counter punches from her hand to deal 6 more damage to Rhino in the villain phase. That's 9 damage dealt to Rhino in the villain phase, and 3 damage prevented. to a teammate, which ends up being her. On top of that, she takes 2 to 3 damage from Rhino's base attack to fuel future Gamma Slams. So you've done a ton of action in the villain phase, and you're still standing, so you can either defend against your attack when Rhino comes up against you, or you can hit him for 3 more, hitting him for 12 over the whole round. Anytime you can hit the villain for 12 damage and prevent some things, you're probably doing pretty okay. So this is like a cool combo that you couldn't do before. You would have had to exhaust She-Hulk to defend, then play Preemptive Strike, then play 2 counter punches. So you would have lost that extra 3 damage, you would have lost the fuel for Gamma Slam, and all sorts of other things. So that's one cool combo where I think She-Hulk gets a huge buff with green cards, which makes me happy for the green Goliath that is She-Hulk. So example 2, same situation. Found my typo already. So this time it's supposed to be that Claw is attacking Spider-Man. So Claw is attacking Spider-Man. He draws his card. Same way. He's not going to defend. Even though he's got those 3 attack, he plays like me, and he's like, I am never defending against attack by exhausting. Especially now after RRG 1.4. Doomsday Chair is flipped up. The mighty Miss Marvel player. She can play Preemptive Strike to reduce the incoming damage by 3 and hit Rhino for 3. Previously, to do this, she would have had to exhaust and then play Preemptive Strike, and then she would have taken the base damage back. Now, she's still standing, so after she plays Preemptive Strike, she can trigger her Morphogenetics ability. She can exhaust and bounce that Preemptive Strike back to her hand. Since Claw gets 2 boost cards, if he flips another Doomsday Chair, she could Preemptive Strike that second Doomsday Chair, canceling both boost cards and hitting Claw for 6 to the face. That's pretty cool. So she's prevented 6 damage to herself, done 6 damage to Claw. On top of this, she has defended without using a basic defense ability. But the attack has ended. Claw's base attack is 0 in stage 1, even though he gets 2 boost cards. So you've taken an attack where you took no damage. So if you had an Unflappable in play, you could now trigger Unflappable and draw a card from it. That's awesome. Miss Marvel in general just gets this giant buff with Unflappable, because previously she would have had to defend and then play Wiggle Room to be able to trigger Unflappable. But now, since Wiggle Room is a defense event, she can be attacked by someone, use Wiggle Room and bounce it twice to prevent 6 damage. As long as the attack wasn't for more than 6 damage, she can trigger Unflappable to draw a card at the end of that too. So she's going to draw 1 card from the first Wiggle Room, she's going to bounce it back to her hand, draw a card from the second Wiggle Room, and then draw a card from Unflappable. Miss Marvel finally works with defense events, which I think has been the intent all along, and now she's there. So that's another really cool example scenario where you can use Miss Marvel with some of these new defense triggered cards. So unfortunately, the only hero interrupt defense cards that are out there really are Preemptive Strike and Sidestep. So those are 2 cards that you can look at enabling you. The rest of them are all hero specific, so Shield Block, Wiggle Room, Cosmic Flight, and things like that within hero kits. Got this little sometimes nerf, sometimes buff, because now you can no longer play those cards and avoid being the target like you could with RRG 1.2. Now when you play those cards, you're also going to be taking base damage from the villain or taking damage that you don't end up preventing. So there's some advantages and disadvantages, but I think ultimately the advantages are much larger than the disadvantages. So what's the rest of that entry? It basically says if a player defends against an enemy attack, they now become the target. We talked about that in those examples. And it talks about what an undefended attack is, which has always kind of been in there, but they added a few more words to really make it clear that if someone that's defending like an ally dies, then the player is going to have to take the brunt of that attack. I wanted to give people one final warning. So the card warning has been hotly debated. We even had it on card of the day here. It used to say defense, interrupt defense. When a hero would take any amount of damage, reduce that damage by 1. Well, that really stinked under the old RRG ruling because you had to be the target of the attack to play warning, which meant you were warning yourself. Well, with this existing text, it would be the same way in this new RRG because of that overlying first statement. But if you look at the errata at the bottom of the newest RRG, warning has been errated. So now it says it should read, interrupt, when a hero would take any amount of damage, reduce that damage by 1. So they have removed the defense tags from warning. This means you can now play warning on any player. It actually no longer relates to that defense/defend entry at all, but a lot of players might get tripped up by that if they only read the new defend entry and they don't read the errata that exists on warning. So just to recap, this is all about the new defend/defense entry. Playing a defense parenthetical event now counts as a defense and makes you the defender/target. So you're going to be taking some damage but preventing a lot of damage to other players. This allows you to trigger responses to hero defenses without exhausting your identity, which is a super cool thing for things like unflappable and things that let you ready if you take no damage when defending. Only one character can defend at a time, so you can play defense triggers when someone else is attacked, but not if they choose to defend. So you're going to have lots of discussion amongst your multiplayer teams when an attack occurs. If you have a defense card in your hand you want to play, you're going to have to say, hey, can you hold off on attacking? I'm going to help you out here. And hopefully your teammates will listen to you because ultimately it's a cooperative game. So I hope everyone is ready to be a little bit more protective of their play partners and see how these new defenses can work out. If you play any new defense events under this new ruling and you see some cool combos or triggers, put them in the comments below. There's lots of players wanting to try out protection for the first time and lots of players wanting to try out new combos. I think everyone would appreciate hearing about all the different combos people find, especially because some of them are like insane next level thought plays, like with Miss Marvel and She-Hulk. So hope you all enjoyed this video. The next one I'm going to do is on the final formulated write-up of the word you. So you better check it out. And when I say you, I mean you, the character, not your allies and supports. And we'll find out about that in the next video. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.